Mr. Chairman, I know that we have enough members on this committee that truly want to solve these problems, that ultimately we can end up with a bipartisan bill. And I know there's been mention of 10 over there and 12 over here, but I'd like to point out some other areas where I think there's a lot of commonality beyond some of the things that are being discussed in this amendment. For instance, the chairman's mark has Jump Start in it. And it's something that we developed in a very bipartisan way. I think it's very important. We've had, on that start, I mean, we had Senator Warner, Senator Vitter, Senator Warren, and myself who created that. But then on top of that, we've had bipartisan support towards making sure that we don't use G fees on our GSEs to actually deal with our budget problems. And in that end, we had Crapo, Warner, Shelby, Heitkamp, Vitter, Donnelly, Kirk, Heller, Scott, Moran, and myself there. So there's a lot of commonality there that it seems to me we ought to be able to move ahead with. The common security platform that I know was dealt with in a committee, something that's very important to make sure that the FHFA doesn't develop something that's solely proprietary for Fannie and Freddie, but actually allows many others to plug into. And I look across the aisle, there's plenty of people who support that, and it's something that to me should be a part of this legislation and is part of this legislation. And I want to thank Senator Shelby for committing to keep it in. I look at the Federal Reserve changes. There are some of those that I don't really like. But I will have to say I thank the chairman for not pursuing the route that many want to pursue in the Senate of putting senators and House members in charge of monetary policy. And we have not done that in this bill, and I appreciate the fact that he hasn't. I actually am glad and appreciate him doing this, that the Federal Open Market Committee will be setting interest rates on reserves. That is monetary policy, and my guess is there's plenty of people on both sides of the aisle that support that, and my sense is ought to make it into a bigger bill. Senator Vitter worked with us to make sure that Title II, that so many of us were involved in Dodd-Frank, ended up not being undermined by virtue of the way we dealt with the insurance community. It seems like to me, again, that's something we ought to be able to work together on. And on the, look, a lot of us spent a lot of time during those days on risk and during Dodd-Frank, and we were focused on 5% risk, and yet on qualified mortgages now, or excuse me, on portfolio loans, that it seems to me if you're holding 100% of the risk on your books, 100% of the risk on your books, we ought to exempt them from some of the rules that apply to loans that are being sold to others. And it seems to me, again, there's a tremendous amount of commonality that exists on both sides of the aisle around that. Manufactured housing. There's a bill in here that actually very similar to the bill that Senator Brown and I co-sponsored back in 2012. Again, something that I know there's significant commonality on. I know Senator Donnelly has been a big part of that. So my sense is that there's an opportunity here before we go to the floor to do something that's a lot broader than what's being offered by the ranking member, and maybe has some tweaks in it based on what the chairman is putting forth today. I will say I have some issues with the bank holding company title. I know that Senator Shelby knows that. I think it's going to be incredibly hard to move from the $50 billion level to the $500 billion level through the regulatory situation. I think that you're never going to get those banks caught up in it. So I think there's something there that we together could work on. So I just want to say, I know the ranking member's amendment is very narrow. I understand that the chairman has some things in it that the other side of the aisle doesn't prefer to have in. My guess is there's a way for us to produce a bill that does free much of the the financial system in a manner that allows hardworking Americans to be able to get credit and yet still protect people from what happened back in 2008. So I look forward to that happening. I want to thank the chairman, thank the ranking member. I do not believe, as has been said, that the other side of the aisle is captured by a wing of the party, and it's keeping them from coming across. I don't believe that. And I believe that the fact is we're going to reach a bipartisan consensus and pass a very good bill that'll be good for our country before it goes to the floor.